to have you here. Aileen, I'm going to pin you so that you are up top and can be seen with us. And I'm going to go ahead and pin me as well. And so glad y'all are here. Welcome, everybody. We are going to get started in just a moment. Ashley, do you have any announcements you need to make while I just quickly fire up Notion? Because it's not coming up on the place that I thought it was going to come up.
Yeah, well, we are really excited about our guest today. And this is really going to put you in a business frame of mind. Remember, we all write because we love to write, but the difference between a hobby and a business is there are other people involved. And we do the work, we do the research, the crafting. And what they do is they agree to an energetic exchange by giving us money for our product. So Aileen's going to talk about all of the amazing ways that she took it into her own hands to get customers, right? Readers for her book that she was selling. And then Allison and I have a couple things going on too. I have a free branding masterclass this Thursday, and Allison's teaching a writer's marketing webinar for Jane Friedman. So lots of ideas and opportunities are going to come out of this call for us today.
I know a lot of people have also had the question, will we talk more about after the launch? And yes, we are going to. And in fact, we're going to have a special panel episode in June, with lots of people talking about how they have sustained book sales after the beginning initial excitement. And I also want to say that Jane Friedman is going to host an after the book launch free session through her Sunday business sermons. We will get that link out to y'all in our follow-up materials when we can. It's not till May the 17th, so all is well. So welcome, everybody. We are so glad you're here. We want to let you know that if you like to have the subtitles, we do have live transcription enabled. If you wish to see the subtitles, you can go down to the bottom where the three dots say more on your screen and select show subtitles. If your subtitles are showing and you prefer not to see them, you can use those same three dots at the bottom of your screen and select hide subtitles, and then they will not be on your screen at the time. So whatever really works for you. We are so glad to have you here, and we are so glad to have Aileen Weintraub here. We are going to introduce Aileen in just a moment. Before we start, we want to share some feedback we got from an Express Lane member. Express Lane is our twice weekly emails with platform building bites in your inbox. And Candace says she's really enjoying how bite-sized the Express Lane is. It's so good to be doing this in little chunks. This week on the Express Lane, Ashley has been teaching how to add adorable custom gifts to our social posts. If you've seen one of Ashley's Instagrams where she's clapping or holding her book, it's making those things. And I have spent 6 weeks teaching how to pitch commercial media, and I am now reviewing and giving feedback on pitches that the writers have sent in. Every week, the Express Lane includes tips on better, easier, faster social media and better writing so that you can get your book into the world and money into your bank account. You can check out the Express Lane at thewritersbridge.com/Express Lane. Hey, Ashley, do we have a question of the week?
We do. Our question of the week is about hashtags. The basic question that we hear over and over is, what the heck is up with hashtags? Are they worth using? Before people would sell their firstborn for a batch of great hashtags. The old hashtag game is over. Here's what's happening now. On Instagram, I want you to think more of SEO. I want you to think more of, in your caption and in your title, telling people what your content is about with real words. Just like you would write a captivating title or first sentence for an essay or a blog post. Keyword searches are actually more powerful, or as powerful as hashtags right now. And that's what the algorithm's using to show your content to other people. The only time I will use hashtags, and this is the same with Instagram and TikTok, is if I want to show my content to someone who doesn't know yet that they're looking for content like mine. So one of the things that works really well is hashtag chore chart if I want to get relationship info out to overwhelmed parents. A lot of times they're like, if only my kids would pick up their damn things, but actually they need a marriage rehab. overhaul. So that's how I use it. Think of your hashtags. If you want to get the information out to people regionally or people in a certain demographic, use a hashtag that is adjacent to that, but maybe it's not, doesn't categorize your content. Allison, what about on Twitter?
On Twitter, use hashtags really sparingly. And as you guys know, Twitter just got sold to a private investor whose name I will not darken our door with, but things might change. As of right now, use hashtags really sparingly on Twitter. It looks, and I say this with love in my heart, amateur to put 6 hashtags on your tweet. Use your hashtag either to deliberately make a joke or to tie into something that's happening right now, like there's something trending like Oscar slap and you want to join the conversation. You can also use hashtag writing community or writers community to bring in writing discussions. And are we good? We're good. Hooray, we're good. And so when you use too many hashtags, it is like a weird blaring extra announcement that is suddenly making itself clear in your post, and it is more distracting than helpful. So let us get into our main topics today. Our special guest today is Aileen Weintraub, who is the author of Knocked Down, a High-Risk Memoir. And Aileen, rather than read your bio to everyone, because they can find that on your website, which we will post in the chat, will you tell us about your book and about the journey that led you to write and publish this book?
Sure. So my name is pronounced Aileen, and everybody gets it wrong, so it's totally fine. No worries. So my book is about being a Brooklyn girl who moved to the country, had this whirlwind romance, and ended up on bed rest for 5 months in a rickety old farmhouse. And the farmhouse is collapsing around me. My marriage starts to crumble. And suddenly I find myself grieving for my father's death, which I hadn't allowed myself to do before this time of just staring at the ceiling. It just all starts coming out. And this is all going on while I'm fighting for the survival of my unborn child. And so then I have to decide what I'm going to do. Am I going to stay on bed rest? Am I going to give it up and take a risk? And so that's what Knocked Down is about. And this journey to publication took 10 years. I wrote this book and I rewrote it and wrote it again for 10 years. So I had a lot of time in there to think about marketing and publicity. And it's been a wild ride so far.
That's fantastic. And when you went into selling this book, when you went into selling Knocked Down, which is clearly a memoir about a really important subject, it's important to you, it's important to other people. It is not necessarily the most like, hey, we are so excited to talk to Aileen about possible miscarriage. It's going to be awesome. But you got really strategic. You read that most books, and this is even most traditionally published books, sell fewer than 2,000 copies. What was your original goal for sales? Did you reach that goal?
So, this book went through a lot of rejection and more than one agent. And when I finally got an offer, it's really interesting because I switched agents and I got an offer and then I got another offer. So after years of trying to get this book published and rewriting it, suddenly I had 2 offers on the table. And I was like, just so happy to get this book out. I figured if like 5 people read it, I'd be so happy. But then realistically, I was like, okay, so I'm going to set a goal of 500 total sales over the lifetime of this book. And I thought for a small press that's pretty reasonable. My publicist later told me that most books don't sell more than 600 copies over their lifetime. So when the book finally launched on March 1st, which was just 2 months ago, we were at almost 1,200 copies.
Wow, that is amazing. And your press is the University of Nebraska, right?
Yeah, and they are amazing. I can't say enough about them. They're so supportive and wonderful.
And a small press can be such a great choice for so many people. And so I say this with love in my heart. Did your press give you any money or support in terms of marketing?
So yes, so they have a publicity team, but their publicity team is very small. I think it's like 2 or 3 people, and they had 30 books coming out on March 1st. And they were very honest with me. And they said they're going to support me as much as they can. And they did. And when they saw that I was doing the work, that inspired them to do more work. And so then they started placing some ads when they saw what the sales were like and the blurbs I was able to get. And they got excited about it because excitement is contagious.
Mm-hmm. And your enthusiasm and drive for getting this book out into the world was contagious and inspiring to Allison and to me. And that's why we asked you to be here, because we've been watching your journey through the Facebook writers groups, through binders, all along the way. So I remember connecting with you maybe 1.5, 2 years ago, first hearing about the book, right? You're in the title and the concept, even maybe before you signed with Nebraska. So tell us a little bit about the timeline. The book came out 2 months ago. When did you accept Nebraska's offer? When did you start with marketing? What did that timeline look like for you?
So most books traditionally take about 18 months to publication. And it was 18 months. And I remember having this conversation with my editor. We had that initial phone conversation, and I asked her about marketing. And she said the books that do the best are the ones where the author really steps up and does a lot of the networking and things like that themselves. And so I kind of took that as my cue, like, okay, this is my one shot. I've been working on this book for 10 years. I'm going to do the best I can. And so I had another book, a children's book called We Got Game, releasing that year, right around that time. And I said, okay, you know what? I've had multiple children's books, and I had gone into marketing kicking and screaming. I did not like to market. I don't like to be standing in front of a crowd. Even Zoom stresses me out. So I was like, I'm going to just do a little bit of marketing for We Got Game, see how it goes, see what works, what doesn't work. So that was kind of my trial run. And We Got Game was with a really big publisher. They actually hired an outside publisher an outside publicist to market that book as well. So I knew I was safe. Like, I knew that I had backup and support, and I still ended up doing and getting more leads than that outside publicist. And so I realized that I could do this for Knockdown. And so I devoted all my time to creating a marketing plan. And I said, okay, for 6 months, I'm just going to work on marketing this book. And I'm going to try to get companion pieces, so that will give me some income in the meantime. And so that was my strategy to make money and to market the book.
When you say companion pieces, I have 2 questions there. Number 1, will you tell us exactly what do you mean by companion pieces? And number 2, you went in with something that you called your rule of 5. Will you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I set mini goals for myself. And I said, okay, I'm going to try really hard to get 5 reviews, 5 excerpts placed, 5 companion pieces, and 5 interviews, and 5 podcasts or radio spots or something like that. And I far exceeded that, because the first thing I did was write a really good pitch letter, and I refined it and I personalized it to every editor. I researched the editor. I followed the editors on Twitter. This is a little trick, is when you see, if you have a book in mind, even before, and I did this even before I had an offer, is if I saw an article or an interview or some sort of press that was similar to a topic in my book, I immediately wrote down that publication. I found the editor. I wrote down the author's name. And if it was an interview, I even wrote down who they were interviewing, so I could go back and refer to it and personalize any emails. And it saved me so much time, because I had this list ready to go.
Okay, I'm getting a little teary-eyed, because nothing makes me more excited than strategic thinking. And Aileen, I want to put a pin in this and highlight some of the brilliance in this. Okay, Aileen had a diversified and specific goal here. 5 interviews, 5 pieces, 5. Okay, it's all bite size. It's all doable. It's all, okay, I'm, 20% there. All right. I finished that. I can move on to this. All right. But, and also what she did, because we have to all realize this, it is not up to each one of us to reinvent the wheel of publishing or business or marketing at any point. Let's take the hard work that other people have been doing for decades and go, okay, that publicist, that author got hooked up with that interviewer because they knew that this was going to be good for their audience. Read the room, figure out what is already going on that is adjacent to your topic, because you can help those people and the work that they've done can help you as well.
Aileen, of the pieces that you pitched, how many of them were op-eds? How many of them were articles? How many of them were, hey, will you review my book? How many of them were, will you do a story on me and my book? Like, how much were you writing tangentially related to your topic, and how much was this is about me?
So, well, I want to go back and answer your question, because I realized I didn't answer the question, what is a companion piece, right? So that leads into this. So a companion piece is a piece that is somehow related to your book, whether it's an essay or an op-ed or a reported piece. And so I had different relationships with different editors. So for example, I had written for NBC Think, so I pitched them an op-ed. And I had two good pieces of advice. One was that you can rip up your book into a million op-eds, right? Like, there's so many. Take every theme in your book, grief, shame, pregnancy, reproductive health, and write an op-ed about that. So that was a really good jumping off point. And then the other was Allison Lane, who's also a binder, and she said, everybody is looking for content. So your job is to provide them with this service. They want your content. They're not doing you a favor. It's mutually beneficial. And so that's how I went into this, thinking like, okay, I have something to give these people, something to sell, that I know they want it because I did my research. And so I had one query letter, one pitch letter, and I just refined it very simply. And I actually wrote something for Writer's Digest that came out last week about how to write a stellar pitch letter. And I unpack my entire pitch letter. Like, I don't have any secrets. Like, I put my pitch letter into this piece. So if you just Google Writer's Digest, Aileen Weintraub, it's the first in a series of 8 pieces on marketing, and you copy it. It worked.
Amazing. And thank you for that generosity. That's one of the reasons we knew we wanted to have you on, because not only did you do things that worked, but this is the key to strategy for everyone. I don't ever want something to be successful for any one of us and for us not to know why. Okay. I would rather have no luck than have something that like feels like it was just a shooting star and we can't replicate it for ourselves or others. So Aileen really looked into, okay, what is working for other people? What is working for me? How can I tweak it? So, and how can I share it then so other people can have this same experience, right? And that is, I think, the biggest thing in business is to constantly be asking yourself, what do people need? Can I fill that need? What do people need? Can I fill that need? Right. And you're doing that for readers and for writers, Aileen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Aileen, when you are doing these, you are definitely using, bits and pieces of your book, breaking off from it, building on it. We have a question that was asked by email by Stacy, who asks, is it okay to recycle a published essay if the magazine it was published in has gone out of print? And if the recycling is okay, should I rework it or can I send it out as is?
That's a really good question. And it really depends on your contract. And I'm not, the one to answer that. I would say that if it's been in print, you want to provide new content. Most people really want new content. And I really, like, even excerpts, like I don't recycle my excerpts, even though I probably can. I might pull a piece for a smaller publication, but I think it's better to recycle, not to recycle it, to provide new content. And, if the one thing about this that I want everyone to know is that if you don't like a certain aspect of marketing, don't force yourself to do it. It it's not going to bring you joy. It's going to show that you don't like it. You're going to suffer. There's something that you can find that you enjoy. And so for me, that was companion pieces, rather than feeling like I'm, begging for interviews or something like that. Like I like companion pieces, so that's what I really focused on. And I think I'm ending up with like 11, not including the Writer's Digest piece, which I'm somehow managing to also kind of sneak in the book title into. So that's, additional marketing for it.
And what Aileen said right there at the end is part of an answer to a question in the chat as well. But the reason this has worked so well for Aileen is that, listen, I use this analogy a lot. Like writers, we are similar to other performers like stand-up comedians. They don't just tell a joke once and then move on to a new joke. We would never laugh if that's what they did, okay? And they would make no money. What you have to do is you have to try it, see how it lands, try it, see how it lands. So it's actually new material every time you perform it. It's actually new material every time you write a new companion piece. Because, and this is, we're talking mostly about how to sell books off of social media, but I'm just going to tie this into how this is similar. If you are asking a question of your audience in your Instagram stories, or you make a quote card carousel, or you make a reel, every time we share our perspective, we have the opportunity for people to reply. And then our perspective, or how we are going to explain it, should shift. I had an excellent mentor when I coached synchronized skating, and she said to me, Ashley, if you're ever teaching something the same way for 2 weeks, you're not doing your job. And I think us as storytellers, if we are ever telling a story the same way for 2 weeks, we're not doing our job either.
We have a great question coming in from the chat from Jocelyn. As far as companion pieces, can you ask the editors to publish at a certain time to coincide with your launch? If not, what's the timing on trying to get the stuff come out around your launch?
Yeah, so I always say go for it, right? And writers sometimes have this fear of upsetting editors. Editors are really busy. But they're mostly really nice and easy to work with. And so for one thing, I pitched editors that I had already had relationships with. So that made it easier to ask. And yes, I did. I asked every single editor if they could hold my piece till February or March. And every single one of them said yes. And I said, if you can't, that's totally fine. No problem. But I just thought I would ask. And it was fine. And then this way I was able to write these. I didn't have to wait till, January to start pitching these pieces for February. I started back in November, December. And so I think if you ask nicely, you can ask almost anything.
I love it. And we had a nice note in the chat. I know you worked with Allison Lane on developing some of your marketing, and she says you developed a suite of marketing assets that were ready to go. So every time you were published, or you were on an event, or you were on a podcast, what did you have handy that it's like, okay, I can paste in a date and a title and put this on my Twitter right now?
Can you wait? What do you mean?
So like, did you have a bunch of JPEGs where you could add in, I'm on this podcast this week, but the announcement is already formatted and designed, and I don't have to build a brand new announcement every time I have a piece being published? Like Allison says you had a series of Canva tiles, a family of image assets. What did you have handy where you could go, let me slap in this information and push it out to the world?
Yeah, so Canva and I had a very contentious relationship throughout my launch. I am not a design person. So that was really a learning curve for me. It took a lot of time, but I did do a lot of Canva. And a lot of the podcasts, a lot of places, even like, for example, you gave me the JPEG to put on my social media. And so that is hugely helpful. And I asked for it, like for podcasts, and I'll say, do you have an image? And people are, people who can do Canva, like do it super quick. It's not a big deal for me. I'm just like, I'm not creative in that way. And so most people will give you the JPEG to promote for you.
Okay,
So
this is I think the time, Allison, can I jump in? Because we had a question emailed in. Okay, what I love so many things about you, Aileen. I'm like, when we do an episode, Allison and we get off the call, and I was like, instant classic, that episode. I'm calling it. I'm calling it right now. I love this. Okay, one of the things that I love, and you speaking to this group, and you and I met in person in AWP, and we just couldn't stop talking, is that you're just a really good communicator. Okay. You're a really good communicator. And in addition to knowing what you needed to do and what you wanted out of people, you knew what you could offer them. And then you were able to articulate that well. So Cheryl asks that she says that she's always fumbling on her words when she's calling bookstores. She doesn't know what to ask, how to get them to stock her book, things like that. So in answering that question, when you are communicating with anyone who you're asking to help you, link arms and help you get this book into the world, how do you start that conversation? And how do you keep yourself confident in the knowing that you really do have something to offer them as well, that it can be a reciprocal relationship?
So full disclosure, I'm so awkward. And for bookstore calls, like, I'm just going to tell you the truth. Like, I practice before I call. I know exactly what I'm going to say, and I plaster a smile on my face, and I know that I have something for them. Their bookstore, they want books, they want good books, they want to be as excited about my book as I am, and so I'll call up and I'll sell myself, and that's one really good piece of advice I think I can offer is when you switch from writer to marketer, you are now a business person. And you have to act like a business person, and you, as a business, you want to sell your books. And I know we all shy away from that. Writers don't always like to be marketing things. We want to be at our desk. We want to sip our tea or our coffee and just be left alone. But we have to become these business people. So, and it takes time. And so I would call my friends, my best friends, and be like, okay, how does this sound? And get feedback. And I'm not afraid to do that.
So smart, so smart. People ask too, Ashley, how do you feel so comfortable on video? Practice. How do Allison and I feel comfortable teaching and leading groups like this? Practice, right? It really does. Allison,
if you read the Brevity blog this morning, I wrote a post that was actually spurred by some comments from one of our previous meetings where I wrote the myth of the extrovert. And the point of the blog is, I have so many people say to me, oh, well, you're an extrovert, so it must be really easy for you. I'm an introvert. I'm not sure how I'm going to do all this. And it's like, no, I do not wake up in the morning and roll out of bed and go, at last I get to fulfill my life's mission of writing press releases. It's work. It's work no matter what you do. And it's not secretly easy for people who are energized in groups. As it happens, I'm also an introvert. I don't particularly like people. I like you people, but I don't like people. Hey, Aileen, who was on your launch team? What did your launch team people do for you?
So I had a hype team. That was one of the best pieces of advice I picked up in the binders and, over the years is, okay, I need to have a hype team. And so what I did was I reached out to my local parenting group that I'm a part of. And I said, okay, I need 50 people who want to read my book. And I got 50 people in like 10 minutes. I sent the book, I followed up, and it was a total failure. And they, I maybe got 10 people to hype my book and they were super excited about it. But, then I realized they're busy. They have young kids, they're moms, they're working, and they don't understand what I'm asking. Like, they don't understand the commitment because they're not authors. So then I said, okay, well, who understands that better than other authors who are launching? And so I created a new hype team with other authors, and I kept it much smaller so we can all communicate and chat together and email. And that worked out really well. So I would say, make sure you join a debut group or a group of people who are launching the same year. You're going to have so many questions. You're going to be able to support each other in so many ways.
And it's really helpful to review lots of your fellow authors' books, because sometimes, and you're not doing it as a quid pro quo, but I've had a number of people who the day after I reviewed their book, they're like, oh, thank you for reviewing my book. I forgot, I meant to review yours. and it puts you back in their mind because you just did them a favor. Aileen, we have a great question in the chat from Anne. Which is better, a full press release or a shorter media pitch? And I think those are two different things. What do you think?
So if I'm pitching to an editor, listen, editors get thousands of press releases. Their inboxes are dumpster fires. You have to personalize it. So I will attach my press release to my pitch letter and say, if you want to find out more about my book, here is my press release, including a detailed synopsis and reviews and blurbs, because that's usually what's in the press release. And so then they have the option to click on it.
Right, but okay, so what I'm hearing from Aileen here is she is offering, here's a pitch for a piece I could write for your outlet because I know you are hungry for content, right? If here, this is why I should write it. This is why the timing is great. This is why it's a good fit for your magazine or your online, your site. If you'd like to know more, there it is. But you're not just saying, hey, I wrote a book.
Right.
And
right?
Sorry, go ahead, Aileen.
Yeah.
But just to clarify, for companion pieces, I wouldn't put the press release. I would just send a pitch or the full essay. So this is if I want an interview, an excerpt, or a review of the book. Then I'm like, here, listen, maybe this book is a good fit. Maybe, and then, a lot of presses were like, a lot of publishers were like, yeah, we'd love to do a review. Do you know anybody? And I was like, as a matter of fact, I do. So then I would connect the public, the organization or the publication with a reporter who can do the interview.
I did that too when 7 Drafts came out. A number of my writer friends who I had read their books, I had given them feedback, I had promoted for them. I had people come to me and actually they even started the whole process. I had about 3 or 4 people who were like, I would really like to pitch an interview with you for Writer's Digest, for Craft, for Catapult. Are you willing to do it if I do it? And I'm like, of course I'm willing to do it. Sign me up. Exactly. And I think a lot of that comes from just being friendly with other writers. And with that, we can be more low key when we're just being friendly with other writers and helping other writers. And it sometimes for some of us feels more comfortable than quote unquote self-promotion.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to being a good literary citizen. If you're online talking to people or, going to events, book events and workshops, or just commenting and promoting other people's pieces or sharing other people's pieces, they're going to remember that.
Exactly. Absolutely. So a lot of what we've talked about is the work you did offline, right? Well, online, but not on social media, right? Of course, you emailed everyone, you didn't, right. Send a messenger owl. Okay. How did you use social media though, for your book promotion? What was the most fun part of it for you and what was the most effective?
Right. So I think the thing that happens, people don't necessarily understand what social media and book promotion means. So it really does go back to being a good literary citizen way before you have an offer on your book. So people get to know you and talking about not the book itself or even the content, but the journey and getting people invested in your story and you as a person, which translates to you as a brand eventually, right? So I would be like, okay, I just got this acceptance. I'm crying and I'm brutally honest. I'm very authentic. I'm not saying buy my book. I'm saying, oh my goodness, I can't believe I just got a yes on this book after 10 years. And people cheer you on and then they want to know the next step. And I think it's really about being authentic and giving people a glimpse into your life. And so that's what, so when I'm people are like, so you post about your dog and that's supposed to sell books. And I'm like, yeah, actually, because then they get to know me. They get to know my dog is sitting next to me while I'm writing. It creates an image in their head. And then when they're reading the book, especially a memoir, they're with me on that journey. And it just makes it more of a solid connection.
It's not about violating your own privacy. You don't have to flash your boobs on Instagram. You don't have to bare your emotional soul on Twitter, unless you're Brooke, in which case it works. Keep going, Brooke. But it really is about choosing what parts of yourself you want to be open with to the audience. Ashley, do we have any more questions in chat?
We do. I love this one. I love this one from Jill. She says, my book already went out on submission once and it didn't sell. So she feels self-conscious talking about the journey because it feels like a failure. What would we all recommend? Want to take that first, Aileen?
Yeah, so my book was on submission for like 120 years. And I know exactly how you feel. I had so much shame. I said, this book is never going to be published. And so in the meantime, while this book was on submission, I was writing companion pieces to build up more excitement about the book when it would finally get a yes. And I just, look, I didn't know if I would get a yes for a very long time, but I kept writing companion pieces and sharing those pieces. So I wasn't necessarily talking about the book, but I was building my platform. So when the book came out, people were like, oh yeah, I've read that article about, women's healthcare that Aileen, and that's what Aileen writes about. And so now she has this whole book on it. And so there was an easy bridge to the book from my pieces.
I love that. I love that so much. And one of the things that got me to the draft that got agent offers and then got me to the place where I broke up with my agent because I realized that wasn't a good fit for me, was acting as if. So
right.
Aileen was acting like, okay, if the book was already in a publisher's hands and it was coming down the pipeline, I would have to be writing companion pieces. So even though it didn't sell yet, what would I be doing if that book had already sold? If the book actually came out last week, what would I be doing to connect with people and to share on the topics that I care about, and to just build your network and build your connections with writers and readers, even if it hasn't actually happened? Allison, what do you think?
I think that this as if thing is really important because one of the things I talked about in my blog for brevity this morning was you really do have to treat it like it is your part-time job, which I think kind of ties into what Chrissy has just asked in the chat, which is how do you manage all your time, stay focused on companion pieces, build platform, your regular life is happening, etc. Aileen, how do you manage your time?
Well, my family was very upset with me for 6 months while I locked myself in my office for 10 to 12 hours a day. There's no easy solution. There's no magic. It's really just putting in the time and work where you can. And I know how hard it is. You have other jobs, you have family, and it's doing the best you can. And again, going back to what brings you joy. So when I would get burned out, I would say, okay, I really can't pitch another person, but I could follow up on like these 10 pitches I sent last week. How easy is that? And then I can feel accomplished and go take a nap or a bath and have self-care. And self-care is really important in this process because we're doing things that we don't ordinarily do. We don't want to necessarily do it. What do we want to do? We want to be writing mostly or procrastinating around our writing. But so I would say, okay, I'm going to do these 5 things on my list, and then I'm going to reward myself by walking away from my computer and spending time with my family or writing something else or just something to take care of myself so I don't burn out.
And I also want to remind everybody who might have children, which I understand are delightful. If you have children, remember also that modeling the behavior of caring deeply about a personal project and working hard to get it into the world, that modeling is also good parenting. Letting your kids see you care deeply about something you have created and be committed to getting it into the world, that is a really incredible thing to do. That's a really incredible thing to do. Ashley, we have more questions in the chat. We had one from Lisa. Aileen, how did you go about getting your blurbs?
That was the single hardest thing for me to do because I hate asking for favors, and that's what it felt like. And I never miss a deadline. I'm really good about getting things in on time. I messed up on my blurbs. I put it aside. I had another book coming out at that time that I was supposed to be getting the blurbs. And I was like, okay, my press said, you only need 3 blurbs. So I had asked a bunch of people, I got 3 blurbs, and then one person kind of didn't come through. So please, prepare for that. Life happens. And so I said, I need an extension. And I had a lot of feelings around blurbs. Nobody wants to ask for them. It's embarrassing. It's, but then I was like, I'm going to lean into this. And so I asked 10 people for blurbs instead. And I ended up getting 8 blurbs. And one of them actually was my mother. I said, because I made this joke on Twitter. I said, forget all these blurbs. I'm just going to have my mother blurb the book. She read it. And she's probably more honest than anybody else. And everyone on Twitter was like, you should totally do that. And so I asked my editor, and because it's a funny memoir, she said, this would be great. So I wrote more letters, I networked, and I asked for favors, and that's how I got all my blurbs.
That's fantastic. What have you been doing that makes you feel good about asking people to help you? Because I know a lot of us, we feel independent. We feel like we've been taught, you got to stand on your own 2 feet. You got to be strong. How do you feel good about calling somebody up or emailing somebody and saying, hey, will you be on my hype team? Will you help me sell my book?
So 2 things. No, I remind myself, nobody else got where they are today and had success without somebody else helping them along the way, or providing them with a contact or a blurb or something like that. So most people are very aware of that and willing to pay it forward. So, that was a really big thing for me to remember. And then the other thing was, I kept repeatedly asking myself, what would I do if I weren't afraid? And that I was like, I would ask for a blurb. I would call this person. I would email them. I would find out how to get this done. And then I would do it. And so, because we're all afraid to be a nuisance or to ask for things when we feel shame or we're not worthy. But what if we just did it anyway?
I love that so much. And just before we go into breakout rooms, I want to say, so I choreographed synchronized skating for decades before I became a writer. And what I would tell my kids performing, kids 5 years of age to 55 years of age, performing is, the trick is not to feel afraid. The trick is to not look afraid. That's it. That's it. Yeah. If you're going to wait to think you're a performer till when you don't feel afraid, that's never going to happen. It's just about doing it anyway.
Great question from Jocelyn in the chat. Is it worth trying to get blurbs before querying to add to your query, or should you just wait until you have a deal? And I'm going to say just right off the bat that it is not useful unless the blurb is from another client of that agent's or someone who is famous enough that their public words will help move books. Aileen, did you have a proposal that had any existing blurbs in it? Did you incorporate it into your query process?
No, I waited. And like I said, I missed my deadline because that was the thing I did not want to do.
How long before publication was that deadline?
So they wanted the blurbs in, I'm trying to remember, but it was probably September, October. So maybe November. So I think each publisher is different, but they had to get the cover. And, because they had to do the jacket copy and everything. So that it did need some time so they can design that.
Okay. And that's a great question to ask your publisher when you get started. We are going to go quickly into breakout rooms. You do not have to go into a breakout room. You never have to go into a breakout room. And it's never as weird as you think it's going to be. If you do go into a breakout room, we encourage you to ask each other, what is your favorite way to promote? When we come back from breakout rooms, we are going to be answering Chrissy's question, the top tips we have for someone at the very start of the publishing process of their first book. And we're really excited to tell you about that as well. So let us take a moment. We will be back from breakout rooms in 5 minutes. You do not have to go into a room. You can stick around in here with us just as well. And I will keep an eye on and make sure that nobody ends up all by themselves. Yay. And if you came in a bit late, I am assigning you to a room now. I am trying to assign you to a room now. Yay. And anybody who's staying in the main room, do you have any questions?
Hey, everyone.
Okay, now I just have to get Aileen out of her breakout room. Okay.
Yeah, Allison, that sun is really moving, that Portuguese sun there.
And plus, like my computer is balanced on a series of pillows right now, and the pillows have been slowly sinking. So you may have seen like my head is getting closer and closer to the top of the frame.
You just need to act as if you have a good Zoom setup. That's all.
Exactly.
Hey, Sandy, do you have a question?
Yeah, there was nobody in my breakout room.
Thanks for coming back. Sorry about that. I'm trying to get people into.
I had the same problem.
Glad you are back. I am just trying to shift people around so that nobody is stuck all by themselves. Yay. And we're glad that those of you who are here. Okay, that one's got nobody in it. That one's got nobody in it. Awesome. I love that like some people really love breakout rooms, and I love that some people just want to stay in here with us. And I think both of those things are super delightful.
I love the breakout rooms. I just went into one with somebody and then they bounced away and then it was just me. So I came back.
We're glad you're back. Do you have any questions?
Actually, I feel bad. I missed the first 15 minutes of the session because I was in the car and I dialed in ahead of time so that I could listen to you in the car. And then as soon as you hit record, you know how you have to approve that, yes, you know, you're being recorded. I couldn't get the sound back. So I had to run in, put my groceries away and come down and get on the call. So I'll have to watch the replay. I usually catch everything live, but.
That's awesome. I don't know what happened to Aileen. I think she's somewhere and hopefully she'll come back. Oh, she's in room 1. Okay, we've got her. Fantastic. Awesome.
Andy,
yeah, I had a question about, and I've been here from the beginning today, but what did she say about her sales?
That she really wanted to, that she heard that many books sell fewer than 600 copies. She wanted to hit that over the life of the book, and she doubled it in pre-sales.
So
it was 1,200.
Yep, she did 1,200 in pre-sales.
Did she give any update as to now? Because how long has it been?
It's been 2 months since her book came out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Mimi, I can attempt to send you to a breakout room. Hang on just a second and let me find you. Yay. Any other questions while you're here?
I had a question about at the very end when she was talking about blurbs and you asked whether she had put them in her query.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not including them in my query. I'm also writing a memoir, but I was thinking about putting it in my book proposal. I have a couple bigger names that I'm going to ask. And that's another question is, obviously I'd contact these people and see if they would offer a blurb. I'm assuming it's that you need to send them your manuscript before you ask them to blurb.
There are a couple options here. Sometimes writers have worked with a great writing teacher who's also an author who has helped edit their book, or they have said, yeah, I'll blurb this for you. And their actual blurb will go in the proposal because they've already read the book or enough parts of it that they can offer a succinct blurb. Other times, in your proposal, it'll say, here are a list of people who I'm connected with who I will contact for blurbs. And it's not that you have to already have a commitment from them or a written blurb. You could just have the list of people. Allison?
Okay.
Did I miss anything there?
And the connection you have to them, why it would make sense for you to approach them.
Exactly. Like I made a list of all of the famous people I had ever had a workshop with, and was stuff like, okay, I was in a 3-week workshop with Danny Shapiro. So yes, she is actually going to return my email, even if she does not eventually give a blurb. And so I did put, stuff like, former teacher, 3-week workshop, that kind of thing, so that it did show that like, I'm not just pulling these names out of thin air.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I'm going to give everybody in breakout rooms a 2-minute warning. Yay.
I tried to get Lily King to blurb my book. I mean, she didn't know me from any, but I pulled a really great quote from her book, one of her books that it resonated for me. And I said, I'm going to put this in the subject line. And maybe, just maybe, we can connect that way. So it's another idea.
That makes sense. Yeah. Lindsay says, I'd love to take a second to turn this to fiction, where we might be writing one book about one theme and another about something else. How can we apply this organized approach in the lead up to publication or even getting an agent? With fiction, just get your writing out there. Get all your writing out there. Publish everything you possibly can and focus on the stuff you love and enjoy doing, so that it will be relatively easy to spend your time doing it, but really just get yourself out there. The more people who see your work, the more people who are going to be excited about it. Karina says, when people did blurbs, what kind of follow-up or thank you is appropriate? What is expected? What is too much or just weird? I wrote thank you notes to people who blurbed me. And when the book came out, I sent them a copy of the book, but that can get expensive if you have a lot of blurbers. Ashley, what did you do for your blurbers?
I am pretty good friends with all of my blurbers. So I sent them gushingly loving voice memos, and we were already in kind of a friendship where like I would do things for them, you know, their kid has a concussion, I'm sending them all these herbal remedies. I mean, it was just like a thank you, oh my God, kind of thing. I didn't send out anything official. And these people as well, I had been promoting their books for a couple of years leading up to it. So they also felt like, oh my God, how can I help you?
Yeah, some of my blurbers were people where like I read their manuscripts multiple times. One of them was a person I'd known since high school. One of them had been my intern. So they were all people who already owed me.
Yep. And Karina, I would say now there's no need to send anything 2 years later. Just see how you can be a good friend to that person if they need anything unrelated to your book in the future.
Yeah. Totally, totally. Well, people are coming back from breakout rooms. We are so glad to have you here. Thank you, Aileen, for dropping your link into the chat there. And will you drop it in there one more time, please, just to make sure that everybody who has come back from breakout rooms sees it? Go ahead and copy paste that sucker in there one more time. We are going to give you our very top tips in answer to a question from Chrissy via email. What are our very top tips for someone who is publishing for the very first time? But before we do that, we want to say, please do join us in 2 weeks. Our next episode is going to be Ask Us Anything. You can use the question button in the email that comes out before the episode to tell us what you want to know. And we'll also take live questions throughout the chat. You can truly ask us anything you need to know all about writing, publishing, getting your book into the hands of the people who need you. So, Aileen, what is your top tip for somebody at the start of the publishing process of their first book? It could be tactical information, mindset advice, anything. What's your top tip?
Right. So my top tip is get your pitch list together. As soon as you get that acceptance, start thinking about editors, places that you want to see your work published. And you know, you don't have to just have one editor. There's plenty of editors at each publication. So that's my top tip. That'll save you. And get your marketing plan in order. Don't wait till 4 months out. Do it 18 months, or as soon as your book, you sign that contract, get a real marketing pitch, a real marketing proposal together immediately.
And Aileen, did you use any particular books or resources to help plan your process as you went through this?
Yeah, so Courtney Mum's Before and After the Book Deal was really amazing. Your Book, Your Brand by Dana Kay was great. And for pitching, the Byline Bible by Susan Shapiro was life-changing.
Awesome. I am going to drop those links in the chat as well. Ashley, what is your top number one tip for somebody who is just diving into the publication process?
I come from a sports background, so I think you need a team around you. You need a team of best friends who you can leave a voice memo when you're so uncertain. You need a partner in your home or a friend who lives next door who you can share responsibilities with, so that, you know, the physical demands of life aren't on you constantly, because your life will not move around to make space for your writing and your dreams and your promotion. You need to put people and expectations in place to make room for that to grow.
Absolutely. And you're allowed to do that. You are entitled to do that. You are entitled to love your book, and you are entitled to spend your time promoting your book. True platform is not being on Twitter all day. It's not dancing with your book on TikTok. It's being aware of your community and engaging with the people whose work you care about, helping them care about your work. It's not about being an extrovert or an introvert. There's a lot of work that you can do from your desk without talking to anyone, and it is going to be work no matter how extroverted you are to begin with. Help yourself, help each other. Everybody here has a story that matters. Help each other get those stories into the world. Thank you all so much for being here. Please unmute yourselves for a joyful goodbye. We're so glad to have you.
Joyful goodbye.
Thank you, Aileen.
Bye, guys. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone. Great session.